Oklahoma City facing life in prison after being found guilty of shooting and killing an armed robber. We warn you, the video you're about to see of the shooting, disturbing to say the least. You can see the two alleged robbers coming into the store and pointing a gun right at the pharmacist. The pharmacist is Jerome Ersland, who is a former Army Air Force lieutenant colonel. Now, Ersland fires his gun, hitting one of them and knocking him to the ground. Then he chases the other suspect out the door. The kid's 14 years old. He returns and shoots the suspect on the ground 5 more times. Ersland says it was all in self-defense. The jury did not agree. Here for a fair and balanced debate is former prosecutors Kendall Coffey and Robin Bond. Robin Bond, you take the prosecution's perspective. Why wasn't this self-defense?
Well, once the need for lethal force is over, I mean, you can't justify this very high level of excessive force. And that's the issue here. If he had just shot the guy one time and gone out of the store and stayed out of the store, I think he'd have been just fine, because Oklahoma's very, very friendly in terms of the right to self-defense and the right to stand your ground. Just the fact that he went back, took all that time to come back into where the danger was, get another gun, and then pump not one, but 5 more rounds into the guy. You know, I think the jury just said, look, this was well beyond what you needed to do to protect yourself or others.
Gotcha. Kendall, weigh in. He felt it was self-defense. The guy broke into his store, was robbing his store. He chased the other robber, came back, and said the guy was moving on the ground.
And think of the terror, think of the extreme danger that was presented when you're looking down the barrel of the gun of a criminal. Everything he did was a continuous response to the most incredible danger possible. He probably, or at least may well have saved the lives of several innocent people. And the big mistake that the prosecution made in charging this guy is they overlooked the fact that during an armed robbery, there's no intermission. You don't step out and say, okay, one guy's on the ground, one guy's on the door. What do I think? Let's go into the situation room and come up with a new plan. It's all a single response to the most kind of terrifying provocation possible.
And what they said, Robin, was that the forensics said that he wasn't moving on the ground. We can't see him on the ground.
You know, but even if he was moving, the pharmacist, when he walked outside the pharmacy, was out of harm's way. He was safe. He could have screamed for help, called 911. He could have gone back and sat on the chest
Kendall,
of the guy.
you agree with that? He was safe?
Tied him up. I mean, come on.
You agree he was safe after an armed robber went into his store? Just because he left, he was safe?
He wasn't safe. No one in that room was safe. He was confronted by multiple assailants. He didn't know who was coming back. He was doing the only thing that somebody could have reasonably done in that situation. And let me just throw out another point. Whatever happened to reasonable doubt? If a real criminal gets the benefit of reasonable doubt, and if a man defending himself and people in his room happens to kill somebody acting in self-defense, doesn't that at least create a reasonable doubt as to whether he acted justifiably in self-defense?
And overall, guys, the jurors were given 2 options. Find him not guilty or guilty of first-degree manslaughter, and either acquit him entirely or first-degree manslaughter. There's no gray area there. Therefore, sentencing in a couple of weeks, he could spend the rest of his life in prison.
Well, yeah, he certainly could, but you know the judge has a lot of discretion in these sentencing guidelines, and I think this is where the potential justice will come in. I mean, the judge can basically reverse the verdict based on the evidence. He can immediately suspend the sentence. He can put him on parole. So, I mean, there's a lot of options here, and the judge will look at all the mitigating factors. Does this guy have a criminal history? Is he a good citizen? I mean, a lot of factors.
My hunch is yes and no. Kendall Coffey, former U.S. federal prosecutor, and Robin Bond, former prosecutor, thanks for hashing out this very difficult case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.